Ukraine is so much defined today by its 2014 revolution. Try to get a clear accounting of how that money's being spent. For example, $11 billion in humanitarian aid.
And I hope the cardiologist who sent us that email that we read yesterday is listening and will now begin a study on adrenaline. We take you to Lviv now, and Joseph Lindsley. Joe, hello. And my question to you today is, do you think the Chinese president will visit Ukraine? I see where President Zelensky has invited him.
Zelensky said he wants to speak with Xi Jinping. China obviously is a force to be reckoned with, but I think the thing, and from the perspective of many Ukrainians, especially people here in Lviv, from which I'm speaking to you in Western Ukraine, they tended to be skeptical of President Zelensky before Russia invaded February 24th. There's great unity now, but people still remember the things that they were worried about during the preceding several years. And one of them was Beijing's, opposition to free societies. And, Ukraine is so much defined today by its 2014 revolution, when people peacefully took to the streets in a very organized way until the pro-Putin regime fled. And Beijing has no respect for this in the same way that they have no respect for the free country of Taiwan. And there are so many parallels between Beijing's desire to erase Taiwan and Taiwanese identity and Putin's attempts to do the same with Ukraine. While it makes sense, China can be an influence upon Russia. And so it's a very delicate line that President Zelensky has to walk on this. And I don't envy that position. But the thing is, probably always with the sense to remember that the reason why everyone is, why Ukrainians are dying is not only for land, but it's for freedom. It's because they want to live in a free society. And even, even in Hong Kong, which is supposed to have freedom, the Chinese have prevented protest and free speech. And so that is always the heart of the issue for Ukrainians.
Joseph, do people there get nervous? Do you get nervous when you hear about the poll numbers in the United States showing decreasing support for money and arms for Ukraine?
Yeah, of course. And Bob, I received many messages from people I know well who believe a lot of crazy propaganda, too, about the war. And even though they know me and they trust what I say, the force of what they hear is very strong. When it comes to the spending from the United States, this is another tricky thing. We hear these enormous numbers, more than 50 billion, approaching $100 billion. And not just me, but many other people I know have tried to get a clear accounting of how that money's being spent. For example, $11 billion in humanitarian aid. And every time I ask about this, I hit a dead wall. In fact, I was talking with a Ukrainian who was speaking with a friend in Silicon Valley who spoke with he's a donor to several senators. And he was speaking with the senators, and they had a great relationship about Ukraine until he began to question, to say, hey, can we get a better sense of how the money's being spent? Because I think a lot of, and from my experience in Washington and New York, a lot of these bills in Washington, there's a lot of stuff hidden inside it. And Ukraine is a popular topic, and so they could put a lot of stuff in this legislation. And so what we have to, as people get tired of this, I guess first remember the exhaustion of the people in the trenches who are fighting, this genocidal regime of Moscow, which also is trying to disrupt all of Europe. But the second thing is that the amount of money spent here is not what it seems. And for example, we look at, more than $15 billion worth of weapons. That's not a new check for that's the value of those weapons when they were purchased in the 1980s and 1990s. And so, yeah, it is a major concern, and there's so much misinformation to get through, and it's even tough to get precise details from Washington.
Interesting. There's an article in The Atlantic that touches on this topic. Have you had a chance to go through that?
Yeah, actually, I thought it was a great article. It's called The West Must Give Ukraine the Weapons It Needs to Win. It's by Phillips O'Brien. He's an American who's a professor at the prestigious University of St. Andrews in Scotland. And he says, the manner in which the West is supporting Ukraine's war effort is deeply frustrating. He says Ukraine is being made to fight the war the hard way and not the smart way. And so his contention is that, since almost, over a year ago, at first very slowly and now more and more consistently, the West has given weapons to Ukraine, but never long-range weapons where Ukraine can go deep behind Russian lines. They've been able to disrupt some of the Russian supply chains, but as he said, Ukraine, as we look at this upcoming spring offensive, once the ground hardens after a muddy winter, Ukraine is going to be a force to attack these Russian front lines. That had they had these longer range weapons, they could have done a lot of damage and could have been in a better state of preparation. But the concern, and so again, this is a question that we've discussed a few times, but our leaders in the West, they want to support Ukraine, but are they afraid to support Ukraine too much? Are they really afraid of a decisive and swift victory where Ukraine could really take out the Russian military?
That's in the Atlantic, if anybody wants to read that entire piece. We were talking yesterday about how you managed to survive there, Joseph, and get a good night's sleep with air raid sirens and war raging all around you. A number of our listeners have sent us questions about that, and we talked about that yesterday. And I know you said yesterday you were going to think about how you managed to get a good night's sleep. What did you come up with?
Well, I hope some scientists make a study of the effects of adrenaline in wartime, because especially in the early months, but now even for those in the trenches, it can be hard during certain times to get a good sleep. But I think adrenaline has a great effect on immunity. In fact, since February 24th, a year ago, there's been hardly any coronavirus in Ukraine. And you think people would be sick if they can't sleep a lot. So there is some effect of adrenaline, and it's something worth studying. But people also learn to adjust. And I just saw this morning a friend, Konstantin Aposhilin. He's a lawyer, volunteer, and poet. He lived in occupation in the city of Kherson, but now he's in Lviv. And he wrote these words this morning about the sleep habits of the people of Lviv. And I'll just share those with you quickly. He said, "I have such a dream in Lviv. I wake up while all of Lviv is deep in the kingdom of Morpheus." Morpheus is the Greek god of dreams and sleep. And he says, in Lviv, a business meeting at 8:30 is equivalent to torture. And at 9 o'clock in the morning, there's hardly any cafe open. Some say the late awakening in the Lion City in Lviv is related to atmospheric pressure, the mountain climate, or the traditions of special courtesy, some kind of politeness that's more like a tact and a restraint. But to me, it seems that Lviv residents just like to sleep. And he says, while the Lviv people, the Lviviani, are in their dreams, imagining themselves Indiana Jones running through the rainforest, I awake, count the stars in the sky and the number of lights outside my window, and trying to solve the secrets of this beautiful city of wind, blowing its own courtesy to the most remote corners of the universe. Good morning, Lviv. Even though you cannot hear me because you don't wake until 9 o'clock in the morning, sleep while it is sweet, and I'll make tea for myself because unlike you, I do not drink coffee. And so that captures a little bit of the spirit of defiant spirit of Lviv, a city that does like to sleep in, even in the war.
And I hope the cardiologist who sent us that email that we read yesterday is listening and will now begin a study on adrenaline. Thanks to you, Joseph.
Indeed.
Peace, and we'll talk tomorrow.
Thank you, Bob. Until tomorrow.
Thank you for introducing Ukraine on your social media pages. That's very important that much more people can get more information about the situation here and how everybody can help Ukraine to stay stronger and to save all the world.
Что он сказал?
Well, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?
Come on now. Oh, which side are you on?
На чьей ты стороне?